Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It's once again time for the internet's favorite movie-based list-making podcast. I messed up somewhere. Hey, I'm one of your hosts, Josh, joined with me, as always, by the incomparable Jen.
We may not be the best, but you're listening to us, so hang out and see what happens because it might surprise you.
We are the best.
How's everything going,
Whew.
Josh?
Oh, you know what? Kind of weird because yeah, I just realized we're not going live on Facebook
Oh, uh-oh.
because they changed their policies. Sorry for
Oh.
everybody that was trying to watch on Facebook. They
And
said,
now you have to have like 200 viewers or 200 participants or something like that,
yeah.
or
See what happens when you don't watch live?
yep.
Okay, it's not your fault, listeners. It's not like we do any advertising or promotion of any kind. God, Vodka Media sucks as
Man,
a company
what
to promote
happened?
your
Jeez.
material. God,
What
whoever runs
happened?
that should be just like fired.
No kidding. Jeez. Dude.
So how are you?
So far so good. Yeah, it's been a kind of a crazy day, but um it's been okay. I'm really, I have to say, putting this list together for me. we we won't talk about what your process is, but I put my list together the day that we got this homework, and I felt so comfortable and so confident with it that I literally hadn't touched it until I just opened up my notes to go through the list. So I feel like that's a good thing. I did want to say something though, and this is sort of specifically about award-winning movies. You know, I as I was going through the all of the nominated movies, I I realized that this process is quite comprehensive. And so, there were a bunch of movies to choose from, but that does not even come close to the movies that were either had really excellent stuff going on with them, were what I would consider to be truly epic award winning stories. They just didn't happen to get nominated by the Academy, but that does not mean that they were not really, really good. So we are just choosing a curated list from people that curated a list in order to give awards. Uh, I guess when I say that, what I'm saying is there are a lot of good movies out there, and not all of them are Academy Award winning movies, but many of them are absolutely epic in their scope, in their vision, in their beauty, in their everything. So, don't be afraid to pick up on some movies that might not have made it to the top lists that we're talking about. Because wow, when I was going through these movies, I was like, but what about this movie? But what about this movie? Wait a minute, they forgot this movie. And then, yeah. So I just thought I'd throw that out there because I do feel like sometimes we kind of think that the only best movies are the ones that have been nominated for awards, and that's not really true. It just isn't.
Godzilla minus one was not nominated for Best Picture.
Oh, that was great too.
I think the best movie of the year last year.
The movie 2001 A Space Odyssey didn't get any awards, no nominations, no nothing. And it absolutely is one of my favorite movies. So,
You know, when it comes to process, I immediately was able to, hammer out a top 15.
mhm.
And then I, of course, over a little bit of time, whittled it down to a top 20.
Okay.
And Yeah, it,
Slightly different direction than I expected, but okay.
my list got bigger, and I'm definitely not moving these around right now. Clicky, clicky. So I come what may. Okay, this is gonna be. Yeah, I have my top 10 locked in. I'm gonna throw the mouse across the room, or at least set it further away on the desk, and
Yeah,
that's it.
why do I suddenly feel like we're playing Do You Want to Be a Millionaire? Is that your final answer? Is that your final answer?
I need
Because,
to phone a friend.
yeah, I need to phone a friend. That's how it feels. Yep.
So tonight's topic, in case you kids haven't figured it out, is our top 10 best picture nominees. There have been 601 nominees for best picture over the years. So we had a small pool to choose from, as you can tell.
Yeah, just a couple.
It would be nice if it was easier, but just the fact that we did have, I hate to put it this way, it's a limited number. 601 is limited. Uh, if you really stop to think about it. But you know what? I forgot what I was saying. So how about we figure out which one of us is going to go through our bottom five first, and that's when we give our bottom five with maybe a couple of words about why they made the list, but no deep dives. Let me repeat: no deep dives into the house and whys. We love these particular films, and then when we get to our top fives, we will expand on why they made the top five a little bit more. So, who do you want to start, me or you?
Well, who's gonna give homework? You're gonna give homework
I'm
for
giving
next week.
homework.
So how
You think we would
about
have a formula about for this right now by now?
I will go first and then you can follow because then that way that kind of gives us the you get the last word.
Okay, we have a formula now, people. You heard it
Yes,
here.
indeed. It was sloppy, but it came together at the last minute. It was all
We
good.
got there. Love it when a plan comes together.
Yeah, me too. All right. Okay. So my bottom five. Now, this is in no, I won't say it's in like a particular, hey, this movie wasn't as good as this movie because these are all great movies. I think I said that before, but definitely, just from these deserve some accolades, but they aren't sort of like at the top of my list. Um, okay. I've got at number 10 a Man for All Seasons. And just a quick word about A Man for All Seasons. It was based on a play. It is the story of Henry the Eighth and his relationship with his most trusted advisor. It's quite a good movie. Coming in at number 9, I have West Side Story from 1961. Absolutely love West Side Story, and I think West Side Story is one of the most copied formulas in Hollywood, even to this day. So, West Side Story. In my number 8 position, I have the movie Sounder. I think I've mentioned Sounder on this program before. But Sounder is kind of like the black person's Old Yeller in some ways, although quite a bit more on the story side. So, Sounder. In my number, let's see, 10, 9, 8, 7, 7 position, I have My Fair Lady. My Fair Lady is one of my truly most favorite movies. I love it. I just watched it the other day. Incomparable. Just excellent. Everything is excellent. And in my number 6 position, I have To Kill a Mockingbird. Gregory Peck at his finest. So To Kill a Mockingbird. So those are my bottom tier 5.
Out of all of
This
those, I've
that was
seen
hard
one.
actually. Really?
Yes.
Oh. And which one? To
Guess
Kill a
which one?
Mockingbird?
That's the
Because
one I
it
saw.
Yes, because for a lot of people growing up that are our age, To Killing Mockingbird was something that was required reading, and then we all watched the movie either in class or something like that. It was like it was known as, hey, if you're cultured, everybody's heard of or seen To Kill a Mockingbird. But I'm really surprised that you have not seen West Side Story.
I've seen the remake.
Mm.
Spielberg. It's like, yeah, I'll give this a shot. And I've always wanted to check out the original, but I've started to watch it a couple times. But if I'm not mistaken, it's got a bit of heft to it as far as time.
It does, although it certainly is not a 3.5 hour epic. It's not, Furiosa or anything like that. It's 152 minutes, which by our standards today is probably on the lighter side of movie watching.
Yeah, yeah, I'll get around to it. I'll get around to it.
The reason that I think that West Side Story it should be for anybody who's a connoisseur of film, kind of a standard, is first of all, it is absolutely, like I said, one of the most copied formulas for good reason. I mean, it works. Um, and if you've seen West Side Story, you start seeing the hybrid plot of West Side Story in 1,000 other films that you have watched. Um, but I think secondarily, or on equal par but second to this, is the music by Leonard Bernstein and Stephen Sondheim Sondheim, not Helm, is amazing. In and of itself, like it kind of stands on its own. West Side Story is the quintessential Romeo and Juliet, but the twist of West Side Story gives the Romeo and Juliet story, and I think, more accessibility than what we normally think of as Romeo and Juliet. So it's really, really worth a watch. I mean, I know I say that about a lot of films, but this one, there's a lot of cultural significance in it. It is absolutely one of those one of those films that really. I'll give you an example of how well or how important this movie is. This is one of the few movies that has been adapted into the Library of Congress for preservation because it has the designation culturally and historically or aesthetically significant. So, to an entire generation, this movie was an incredibly important piece of art. Does that make sense?
It does. It does, and it makes me feel even guiltier about not having seen it.
Definitely give it a watch. I mean, the reason most people cite that they don't want to watch West Side Story is because they say, well, it feels like a Broadway play, and they're right. It absolutely was based off of a Broadway play. Um, but I don't know. I mean, to me, that's a little bit like saying that you don't want to watch Jesus Christ Superstar the movie because they'll never, capture what they saw in a theater production. No, actually, they're quite a bit different and absolutely stand on their own. And again, a lot of this has to do with the music. The music is just absolutely, it's iconic. So
I
definitely,
love a good musical, so
yeah.
I watched The Music Man today.
You definitely are the kind of person who would, which brings me to my second movie that I'm really surprised that you haven't heard, which is My Fair Lady.
I've heard of it. I just haven't seen it.
Y- that's another one. I mean, look, I say, hey, you haven't seen A Man for All Seasons? Oh, you should totally see. Okay, but give or take, maybe that's just not up your alley. But My Fair Lady, if you like musical,
Which I do.
that's definitely every drama kid that I know, every theater kid that I know, has seen My Fair Lady because it's sort of like the starting point for a lot of the introduction to theater. And some of it is the grandiosity of it, some of it is the accessibility of emotion throughout, but a lot of it just has to do with, okay, there's a simplicity to this story, but it's a crazy roller coaster of a wonderful, and part of it is, Katharine Hepburn, just she made this. She really, 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 really made this movie. But I would definitely highly suggest watching My Fair Lady.
Well, I have been on a 60s musical kick, so I'll probably check that out fairly soon.
I hope so, and I hope that you get to tell me what you think about both of the movies, because I think because I'm really interested, based on your understanding. And I'm sorry, I don't know who I said. Did I say Audrey Hepburn? I did say Audrey Hepburn, right? I hope I said Audrey
Uh,
Hepburn.
sure,
I hope that I said Audrey Hepburn. I
you
think
did,
I
but
did, but
sure.
now, see, darn it, I knew I was gonna get that mixed up. Um, okay, because the movie stars Audrey Hepburn, and the the once again, the if you started out in theater, if you love theater, and then you moved over into movies, this is definitely the movie for you to watch. Even before you watch like The Sound of Music or West Side Story, or this is the movie for you to watch. So there you go.
Yeah, in our household, growing up, Sound of Music was one of those annual traditions, especially when like came on VHS for the first time,
Mm.
and it had those two tapes, and my dad was all like, "There's two tapes. This is great."
It was special. It was so special. But story wise, again, just from a ground up music and film appreciation, I think My Fair Lady stands a little bit taller than The Sound of Music. Not in popularity, but just in technique and sort of the visual aspects of the storytelling. Yeah, so people can disagree with me, but I definitely think that that's the one to watch.
Yeah, you're not wrong. The reputation has preceded it. I am woefully behind on a lot of classics,
Mm,
and but summer's here. I get time to. I think I watched like 28 movies last week.
wow.
So some of them, all time classics. Some of them, not so much. I watched two Kurosawa films. I've never seen Kurosawa before.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
I watched the Man with No Name trilogy. I haven't seen any of those before.
Nice.
So I'm trying to get caught up. I think I mentioned last time. I don't remember. I realized I'm a huge Jack Lemmon fan.
Oh, nice.
The guy's so funny, so amazing. And it surprised me to see that Glenn Ross was not an Oscar nominee. Very, very surprising to me.
Oh, that's yeah, that is interesting actually. I watched Dune 2 finally. I am so sad that I did not get to see that in the theater because I feel like that is the whole point of watching that particular movie. But as a fan of the story that is Dune, and as a fan of the writing book wise, uh I couldn't have been more happy with the outcome. It was absolutely an amazing movie. Now, Dune Part 2 isn't eligible for an Academy Award, uh, or wasn't eligible for an Academy Award for 2024, but might be included for 2025. We'll have to wait and see. It kind of slipped through the cracks. So
Oh yeah,
we'll see.
it's for sure going to be nominated.
But it's beautiful. I mean, it is absolutely stunning. And there are uses and, let's just say, excellent choices in both saturation and desaturation of color, which make every environment feel as if it is absolutely its own world. It's really, really genius. I just can't speak highly enough of it. It's absolutely gorgeous. And who doesn't want to watch Paul ride sandworms?
Now,
I
here's
hear.
the part I have to confess that I've never been exposed to any kind of Dune culture.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you're taking that surprisingly well.
Well, I mean, I think uh, first of all, Frank Herbert isn't for everybody. Um, his writing style is dense and I won't say difficult because I don't want to I don't want to make this some kind of like elite talk about who reads what. But there is a density to his writing style which can be a little bit difficult. It's kind of a slog to get through if this isn't sort of where you want to be, if you're not really invested in it. I happen to be, when I was growing up, surrounded by a bunch of nerds, who at the time didn't even know that they were nerds. They were just absolutely everything at all times science fiction. And they imparted upon me this sort of love for these alternate places and different worlds and Isaac Asimov and Ray Bradbury and, hey, and they would talk amongst themselves about these places, and that encouraged me to go read them. Now, I did not understand a lot of what I read at the time, but as I grew, I kind of like grew into loving a lot of this stuff. So I get it. I get it.
This all has given me some inspiration, but we'll find out about that at the end of the show.
All right.
In the
Okay.
meantime, I have my bottom 15 to get to.
No, that would be 5 and not 15, but nice try. I could almost have let that slide, but no, we're not gonna. You get 5. Choose
Okay.
wisely. Choose wisely.
I already chose. It's been
And then
locked in for
I'll tell you
second.
if you chose poorly.
Okay, then no pressure, right?
No pressure. I mean, it's either you're going to walk away or you're going to melt into something into the desert. So, yeah, you got this. You got this.
By preference, I don't really have one. Number 10. My number 10, LA Confidential.
Ooh, good movie.
My number 9, 1917.
Also good movie.
Number 8, Whiplash.
Mm.
Number 7, and a perennial favorite on this show, Dr. Strangelove.
Oh, yeah. Oh, there's Stanley Kubrick, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
Number 6. This might ruffle a few feathers out there. Nah, probably not. Mad Max Fury Road.
Awesome. I absolutely would have included that if there wasn't so much else to populate my list with, but absolutely deserving.
I, for the longest period of time over the last uh, couple weeks, it sat squarely in my top 5
Wow.
because I was like, yeah, I want to talk about how awesome this movie is. But the last second, it got bumped. And I'm a little disappointed that I won't be talking about it. But there are other things that we got to get to. So yeah, that's my bottom 5 for Best Picture nominees.
Great list. Really good. Very
So let's get to
10
your
stars and no notes. Very good. Very good.
sweet. What's your number 5?
All right. My number 5 is a movie that I know that I have talked about before. However, in a list that talks about movies with excellent accolades, this is one of the, I think, most underappreciated movies that there sort of are out there, in the sense that the performances in this movie are unbelievable. Just absolutely. Man. Okay, so here's the premise. You think you've got a messed up family. Wait until you meet the Plantagenets. We've got King Richard before he was the king. We've got King John before he was the king. We've got Audrey Hepburn, who is absolutely uh, every bit of grace and gorgeousness. And we've got an amazing I'm sorry, not just a cast, but an amazing backdrop, a setting that is medieval England during the time of sort of, it hits a strife level that we probably are experiencing now and can't even recognize it, but it's just as crazy. Politically, the world is going upside down. Back in this particular period of time, which is around the 12, oh, I forgot the exact date. Okay, so here, let me give you why I think this movie deserves a special mention, even though A Lion in Winter did not win the Academy Award. I did it again. I said Audrey and I meant Catherine. Okay, so the movie stars Peter O'Toole, who is just sort of either by accident or design, also in another movie in my top five. Peter O'Toole and Katharine Hepburn work together, and together I mean like as actors on screen, but they are completely cross purpose in what it is that they want during the entirety of this movie. Um, a Lion in Winter is sort of the it's sort of the I'm trying to think of a good way to say this without sounding like I'm trying to draw too many parallels to what's happening with us right now. But let's suffice it to say that it's about family dynamics and how broken things can be, but their lives are not just like, their own personal uh ups and downs. Everything that they experience has a ramification in the world at large, because they are he's the king of England. He's got two sons that are vying for his both sort of love, but also for attention, like, what's going to be the most important. And then you have Katharine Hepburn, who is Eleanor of Aquitaine, and Eleanor of Aquitaine is one of the most powerful women that I can think of in history, period. She just simply commanded a presence and a, a reverence from people around her. And she 1000% is sort of at cross purposes with the king. Now, the I think what makes this movie so amazing is, again, the actual performances, but two, there is a an undercurrent in this movie that talks about the brokenness of people, and how being broken does not necessarily make you either good or bad, but but there's ways to cross the line. That is, being broken isn't the end of everything, but the choices that you make as a broken person, those can actually reverb throughout history. And I think that we see that, because we see, King Richard was revered and, said to be as regal as his father. And Prince John, who became King John, is seen as, sniveling. And all you have to do is ask any kid who's seen the Disney Robin Hood show, who's sniveling. It's got to be Prince John. History was not kind to the Plantagenets, and definitely this family in particular. There's another aspect to this movie, which I know I'm going on and on about, but the other thing about this movie that is so amazing is, if you look at the set design and the costumes that they were wearing, there's at the time, there was very little that had any kind of competition to this. They were excellent. The set designs were absolutely beautiful, and they're stark. Um they're they're not the over the top opulescent kind of environment, because these are castles that were necessarily sort of bleak and cold. And you begin to find that the reasons that things feel so off is because it's the family that makes everything feel barren. It's the family that makes everything feel even when it's decorated as if it is ugly and jagged under the surface. There's so many, I can go on and on, but this movie, A Lion in Winter, is just one of my most favorite movies, I think. And in this category, it definitely deserved an Oscar nomination. I'm sad that it actually didn't win. So there you go.
What year was it nominated?
A Lion in Winter was nominated in 1968, I believe.
Okay.
And I said 12 something, but that's not right. The entire movie takes place in 1183. So this is when Prince John, as we know him, was still a child, yeah, like a teenager. But we have in this movie, we have Anthony Hopkins, we have Jane Moreau, we have Timothy Dalton. That was the very first movie that Timothy Dalton was ever in, and we have Nigel Terry. So we've definitely got a good cast of up and coming actors and actresses in this movie. Really, really excellent altogether.
I wish I had something to add, but I never heard of it.
I know. I think I remember you saying that the last time, and it's always fascinating to me that people don't know about this movie, but it's a I don't want to say it's a niche movie, but it's a unless you were interested in medieval politics, you might not see it. However, for its artistic value, it is absolutely worth watching.
You sure you don't want to, move halfway around the world and join my trivia team?
I might. Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll do that.
Sweet. Because there's definitely a gap when it comes to medieval politics on the team.
Oh, yes. Then I am definitely your person. Oh my gosh. I mean, all of my romance novels that I wrote were all, well, not all, most of them were centered in a period between about 1100 and 1300. So I had a fairly nicely defined period of time.
So if I want to find your romance novels, I should look up for, excuse me, look up reviews that say, strangely historically accurate.
Yeah, there you go. That's exactly it. Yes. Paid way too much attention to what tallow candles smelled like. Yes, like that. That was actually a note from
That's
one of my editors. One of my editors said, "Nobody even knows what tallow is. Why are you explaining what it smelled like?"
just set the stage.
It's called world building, Alice. World building. But yeah, whatever.
There's like a dozen people that are really going to love this and be fans for life.
Exactly.
And that's okay. Well,
Yeah, they were the core anyway. So, all right. So, what's your number 5?
my number
Let's hear
5
it.
has also a theme of kind of messed up family, I guess.
Mm.
But
I think that's a common theme, actually.
but it's not as messed up as yours. Mine just has like a cranky mother figure because it's the main character's mom.
Oh.
And in fact, it has, I think, one of my favorite ambiguous endings. This film, and a good few lines that lead into that, and I relate to it so hard these days.
Hmm. Now I'm
Um,
very interested. I'm
I don't know
intrigued.
whether I should read the lines and be like, guess the movie, or just go ahead and say it. What do you think?
I don't know. In this case, maybe say a line and see if I can guess it.
You said let's play Say the Lines. So that's, for those of you wondering at home, that is when I do a recitation of some dialogue from the film. Sometimes it's a couple of people, a couple of characters talking to each other. Sometimes it's a little bit of a monologue, but every time it's fun for me. So Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. You don't like her. My mother don't like her. She's a dog and I'm fat, ugly man. Well, all I know is I had a good time last night. I'm going to have a good time tonight. If we have enough good times together, I'm going to get down on my knees and I'm going to beg that girl to marry me. If we make a party on New Year's Eve, I got a date for that party. You don't like her? That's too bad. Name
Ooh.
that movie.
Uh, that's a okay. Let's see. You don't like her. I feel like I should know this.
Well, I'll give you a little bit of a hint. It was nominated for an Academy Best Picture,
Oh,
but it
really? Oh,
also
just like in our list? Yeah. Okay,
but
that's
it
fair.
also won.
But it also won.
It won Best Picture for the year it was released.
Um, I mean, I really feel like I should know what this is. Um, let's see. Okay, one quick question.
Yo,
Okay, is the person who said this, was that the main character of this?
yes, he is the titular character.
Oh God, I don't know. I mean, I really feel like I should know who this is or what this is. It makes sense, but I cannot think of what it is. I don't know. Go ahead.
The answer for Best Picture winner from 1955 is Marty.
Oh, right.
That's
Boy,
right.
that's another little known one. Like not one that I think everybody would know.
I would have no idea what this movie was if it wasn't for Quiz Show.
Oh,
Do you remember Quiz Show?
I do remember Quiz Show.
And uh, what was that? John Turturro.
John Turturro, right?
And the question that they had him throw about who won Best Picture in 1955,
Hmm.
uh, and he was so upset that he had to throw it because he was like he didn't want to, but he did, if I remember correctly. But he's like afterwards, he was like, "Why wouldn't I know it was Marty? I saw it like 8 times. It was Marty. Everybody knows it was Marty." And I'm like, Marty? That seems like a weird name for a movie. And then I saw that it was like Ernest Borgnine, and I'm like, oh,
Yep.
okay.
That's
And
with
then
uh that's with Clara, right?
yes,
Okay. Yep. All coming back to me.
but Marty is a 34-year-old butcher who
Right.
lives with his mother and is a bachelor. That's what they called him back then. You weren't single and desperate. You were just a bachelor. You lived a specific lifestyle. And if you were a confirmed bachelor, that meant something completely different. It's Pride Month. You're allowed to talk about it.
Yeah, there you go.
So what happens is Marty's convinced to go to this sort of dance where he meets Clara. They end up having a nice time together. Both of them kind of down on themselves. And it's funny because, I guess he's trying to make her feel better. And he's like, we're both ugly, but we're not as ugly as people think. And we like spending time together. And that's really all that matters. It's like, yeah, this guy's smooth.
This, just if I can interject something about this movie. This
Oh,
movie
yeah.
is one of those movies that makes you feel something. Uh, Generally not great afterwards, but it is stirring. It is very stirring. I mean, the whole point is you're not supposed to feel great afterwards. There is definitely a level of, oh my god in this movie, and I it works. It's really, 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 really good.
Marty is very much an everyman, or at least an every guy like me, you know, single, overweight, it is what it is. But what seems, especially as far as the sign of the times go, when he's getting constantly harangued about,
Mhm.
not being married, not having kids, it's it's brutal,
Yeah.
right? And if you already feel, bad about yourself because of how you feel about the way you look, and you have all these people reminding you, hey, yeah, you're single, and you're like, yeah, I know, I'm ugly, right?
Yep.
So definitely not a great flick for mental health, but
Well, one of his signature lines is, "You don't get to be good-hearted by accident." Um, and then I think he says something like, "If you get kicked around long enough, you become the professor of pain."
Marty is a tragic character in
Very.
it, in like I was saying, the mental health aspect. But it's a little unfortunate that we don't get to see him have a happy ending, but also thank goodness we don't have to see him have a terribly tragic ending.
Right.
We just see him. Well, you know what? Spoilers for a movie from 1955.
Just in case, yeah.
Just give me 30 seconds if you want to skip ahead. It's his mother and his aunt that are telling him, no, just be single, take care of us, and that's it. That's your life till you die. But he says, no, I liked her. We may not be the most attractive people in the world, but we enjoyed each other's company, and I'm going to call her. So he goes to the phone booth. His buddies are like, don't be nuts. And he's like, that's when he, said the words that I read, recited earlier. And we see him make the phone call, and we don't get to know the result of that phone call. I'd like to hope for, a good outcome. Gives gives schlubs like us a chance to, have hope. But I also know that maybe there's some people out there, they're like, life is darkness. She didn't pick up.
Yeah.
So it could go either way, and that's kind of a brilliant thing about it. That's why Marty's my number 5.
Nice. Well, it's kind of that's sort of a perfect on a theme here. Um because my number 4 movie is a movie that also deals with mental health in a way that is a little bit more overt, but definitely is surprising. Um so once again, when I was growing up, I was surrounded by people who were nerdy, but also very interested in um, literature. Uh, yeah, I always struggle with this because every book to me is like literature, but truly there is sort of like a difference in some ways. But this particular story really captured the attention of a lot of people, um, and it this movie also always makes in almost every list that I have ever seen, a top 100 for 100 movies to watch. Like, 100 movies to watch before you die, 100 movies to watch because, to get the cultural significance of a time, whatever. It almost always makes every single one of those lists. And I feel like part of the reason that this movie is included is not just because it is such a well acted movie, but also because it really hits a time when this was absolutely a norm, and it's a little bit scary that we treated people this way. Um, I bet you can guess the movie if I tell you that it ends in a lobotomy. Can you guess the movie?
Guess the movie. It ends in a lobotomy.
Hmm.
There's so many.
Well, did it been nominated for an Academy Award?
I guess that would narrow it down a tad bit.
But you might not have seen this movie, so in all honesty, maybe that's unfair. Okay, well the movie's name is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh, I have seen that.
Okay, well that's great.
And
In
I'm
fact,
guessing it's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
yeah, that's the one.
Nailed it.
In fact, Hulu, I think, was it Hulu? Maybe it was Netflix. I can't remember. Somebody did a really interesting prequel to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by
Netflix.
showing us. Was it Netflix? Okay, by showing us the life of Nurse Ratched before Nurse Ratched was Nurse Ratched. And it was way, way, way crazier than I would have expected it to be, but it was really good. I was pretty impressed with it. In any event, it was not One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Okay, so this movie, what makes this movie great and worthy of making my list is, like I said, the stars of this movie are absolutely amazing. First of all, Jack Nicholson, he's such a baby in this movie, but he's unbelievably great. Um, there's something both suave and confident, and also just a little bit of a jerk. Enough that it sort of like it makes you feel like he's you could tell that everybody's trying to thwart the system, but the system is just one step ahead of them, and they're not going to be able to thwart it. He goes into a mental institution with some other people, and they do so to basically escape a prison, and the prison is, let's just say, it's not great. Um, and they think it's going to be easier to be in a psychiatric ward, but the psychiatric ward ends up being absolutely awful, and they do not treat psychiatric patients with the level of either dignity, care, or anything else that resembles human compassion or kindness. And it ends up being a real journey. One of the things that I really love about this movie is that each one of the character arcs is absolutely just on point. You can really see that from the beginning to the end of this movie that there is a complete journey that has gone on. And to be honest, it's not great. The ending of this movie is sorry, I had to adjust my headphones. The ending of this movie is not a happy ending. It's a very difficult ending to kind of come to grips with. Um it I remember watching this movie, and I don't remember under what circumstances, although I do remember that I was fairly young when I saw this. And I it's kind of sat in my brain, because Jack Nicholson was so amazing, but that, Nurse Ratched was scary, very scary. And then in I guess junior high or maybe high school, I don't know, I read the book that One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was based on. And I have to say that, just like every adaptation, there was an awful lot more to the book than there was in the movie. And I was absolutely just enraptured once again with the actual story after reading the book because it had so much depth. So the movie itself is phenomenal, but the book is also great. This movie definitely really it there's some unbelievable directing. The movie was shot on location at a real psychiatric hospital, or well, a hospital anyway. And I think it was in Oregon somewhere. But it was like there was an actual there was the feel of realism here. It wasn't just like, cutaway close shots because you don't have the giant hallways, or you don't have the, sort kind of like bigger sweeping shots to use because you just don't have that kind of set. They really utilized so many awesome camera angles and new and sort of like novel ideas for how to show the truly awful aspect of mental illness, not the caricature of mental illness, but the, hey, the good guys can oftentimes be a lot worse than the villainized people that they are supposed to be, um quote unquote, guarding us from. The monster within is sort of a fairly big premise here. I was absolutely astounded by this movie, and it's still, every time I see it, I haven't seen it in a long time now, but every time I have seen it, it leaves an impact on me. It really makes me remember that we really didn't treat people with mental illness or with any kind of instability. We did not treat them well. We treated them terribly. And sort of the final solution to acting out was, okay, well, if that's the way you're going to act, we'll take part of your brain. I mean, it's like, it's such a devious, horrible solution. So, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which came out in 1975, gets my number four choice.
That is a very good, very hard pick.
Mm, yeah.
Uh, God, so brutal.
Impactful though, right? I mean, I don't know if I should say right, but I felt like it was incredibly impactful. Like it left a mark on me.
That's where Homer Simpson met Michael Jackson.
Oh, there you go.
Simpsons
Glad
reference out there.
glad we could facilitate that. That's
And
awesome.
that's the chief. He doesn't say anything. Hi. Hi.
Nurse
Uh,
Ratchet as a character is like, to a certain degree, anybody who mentions Nurse Ratchet, you know what you're talking about if you say the character is a Nurse Ratchet character. Because it just has such a singular, iconic resonance to it. Not so much Jack Nicholson's character, who I'm now going to absolutely forget the name of the character. Uh, good lord, what is wrong with me? Randy, right? Randy. Um, I hate having old person moments. But
I haven't seen it in like 20 years, to be honest.
Randy, I know, but I just got through saying how impactful it was, and here I can't even remember the main character. Because I see him and I see Jack Nicholson, and I'm like, yeah, that's good enough.
Mm.
But the Randy is sort of like, he's an archetype character, right? I mean, he is, he's swarmy, he's, jerky, he's thinking that he can get the better of everybody, and that is a type of character, and he plays that role really, really, really well. I mean, I remember having to ask my grandmother or my aunt, I can't remember, what's statutory rape, because that's what they say that he was there for, and I had no idea what that was. um what I remember though about the character here, and not about his character, but about Nurse Ratchet, is that Nurse Ratchet had all the control. And despite the fact that everybody thought they were getting one over on her, she represented something far bigger than just individual control. She represented a kind of clinical, cold, calculating official control that was big, that was organizational, that had, all the strings lined up. And a Nurse Ratchet character is partly cruel and partly uses the specifics of their office in order to facilitate whatever outcome that they want. It truly, I think, changed well, maybe not changed, but better defined a type of character archetype for many later films. So, and this is another one I think that was also inducted into the Library of Congress. So, yeah, good job.
Did you just tell yourself good job?
No, good job to the movie for
Okay.
the,
I mean, it is a good job.
this movie.
Great pick.
No, no, I meant Library of Congress. Good job for recognizing greatness. This movie was the budget for this movie was something like $4 million, and it earned $163 million. So it also made it like one of the most successful movies of the time, because for a $4 million investment, they kind of made their money back, by a factor. Pretty amazing.
Well, I applaud your choice. And are you ready for my number 4?
I'm ready.
Because this is going to come as a surprise to a lot of people, not because of me picking this movie, but because this movie made the top 5.
Mm.
It's made the top 5. 601 movies. This one made the top 5. Well, it did. My number 4. It's a shame we already played the game. Dang it.
What's
So my number
mine?
4 is The Banshees of Inisherin.
Ooh, yes. That was an amazing movie. Although you're probably good that you didn't get to tell me lines from that movie, because although I remember the movie, I haven't seen it enough times to remember all the dialogue.
I actually, if I'm going to be honest here, I have a hard time remembering some of it too. Like one of my favorite lines was, it's like, "But you liked me yesterday."
Would you like to be yesterday?
So great. But no, the Banshees of Inisherin going on this extended mental health run where we're on. It's about two friends that aren't friends anymore because one of them decides to call off the friendship because the other is just too boring.
Mm.
It's a rough,
It's very sublime.
very much so. And the thing is, when I watched it, at first, it's just two guys that are kind of bickering. Great performances, don't make no mistake about that. But there's just, why don't you want to be my friend anymore? Leave me alone. That's like the first act. But
Yep.
then once the fingers start coming off, it's like, what? What is going on? So I'm not going to go any deeper than that. That's just kind of their breakup is not mutual. One is very clearly, wants to be. He doesn't even want to be left alone. He just wants this one particular person to stop talking to him, even though they've been friends forever. Just one day, he up and says, "We are not friends anymore." And then the other one's like, just always asking why.
Hmm.
What happened to where we are not friends anymore? And I got to be honest, a lot of it, I feel, I feel very connected to the. Uh, I have it written down because I know they're hard names. Well, Patrick, Patrick.
Right.
Um, I relate to that person. In fact, it's kind of an instilled fear in me that some of the people that I love the most are just going to say, "Yeah, we're done." And
It's
it
ghosting. It's ghosting, but the person's still there. You still can see the person, you still know, but it's that same idea of being ghosted. Like you no longer have any relevance in my life.
being able to see somebody, as you mentioned, every day, knowing that you shared so much, and then
Right.
suddenly you can't go there anymore. even though it's like right there.
Yep.
It hurts. It hurts a lot. And the anguish goes back and forth. It the range of emotions is stunningly portrayed by Colin Farrell, who does an incredible job of trying to figure everything out
Hmm.
between his sadness and his anger and his confusion. It just all comes out. And by the way, I've always said this when it comes to this movie. If there was anything, if there was like any other writer or any other, you know, director, what have you, that was telling the story in this world, that was telling a story in this particular world, right? Uh, this would not be the story they would be telling because in the background, in this beautiful Irish countryside, you see, explosions going off in the distance of the Irish Civil War. And when I was watching it, I was like, yeah, anybody else would probably set the movie on the other side of the water
Yep.
because over here it's just two guys bickering about not being friends anymore. But
Yep.
the escalation is what really hooks you. The premise is just so incredibly simple. It's like it. I said it so many times. It is quite literally a movie about two people that are not friends anymore. That's it. That's the movie. Now, like I said, the escalation is what makes it a great movie. Not to mention the absolutely wonderful jobs of like every single person on this cast and the roles they play, whether it's a loving sister or a guy down at the pub that's like egging someone on. Everybody is so pitch perfect. You buy into it immediately. Colin Farrell in the Batman, he was the one in the Batman, right?
Yeah.
Unrecognizable. But of
Oh,
course, he was wearing a lot of makeup.
absolutely.
In this, he just looks like Colin Farrell, but still unrecognizable because he plays the role so well. He just melts into the character he's supposed to be. And
It takes a lot for a character to play a debasement of or a role that is so incredibly like the character themselves are so debased, and to play that with such authentic feeling, that is really really hard. Like, you have to set aside so much ego. It's so much easier to play I am Batman than it is to play I'm this humble guy, not, well, maybe not even this humble guy. I'm this guy who does not understand what the heck is going on in the world. It's confusing and I'm just looking for answers. Like, there is something really really um thought provoking about that. I give Colin Farrell crazy accolades for this movie. Just crazy.
he passes the eyebrow test with flying colors.
Yeah, absolutely.
For those of you at home wondering what the eyebrow test is, well, there's this thing. It's I don't know if anybody else goes by this metric, but it's one of the many metrics I have when it comes to spotting great performance. When you're emoting, you know, you people tend to focus on, you know, what to do with their eyes, what to do with very obvious body parts, right? But if you include your eyebrows in on the performance, especially when it comes to like confusion and anger,
Right.
and the fact that he's like doing three things: confusion, anger, sadness, all at once.
Mhm.
It's it's a spectacle. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful movie.
Yep.
And not that's not even bringing up the God, the majestic freaking countryside that makes me want to just leave everything behind and
Go
live
raise a
in an
couple
Irish
sheep
village. Yeah,
in the Irish village. Yeah, exactly.
that's it. It's so, oh God, so beautiful. It's one of the reasons 1917 was on my list. Is just the cinematography makes it so inviting, and that was like freaking World War setting. But Banshees of Inisherin is my number four. Oh, it's a beautiful, exquisite movie.
It's also that movie was also, for the most part, not everything, but most of it, was shot with a lot of very practical. Um, I can't even say effects. It was just shot very practically. It was shot with very little in terms of, massive green screen or special effects, or it was very much just close and personal with the actors, which I think is refreshing. It's very refreshing.
I feel like I've neglected something because I went through that whole thing and did not say Brendan Gleeson's name once.
Oh yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant man. And Barry, the guy's last name, I never remember how to say. Uh, everybody's just awesome. Everybody's
Brendan
awesome in this movie.
Brendan Gleeson is very underrated, both as an actor, just in general, but his his attention to detail in the character art is exceptional, absolutely exceptional. And yes, definitely deserves as many accolades as we can give him.
I will say this as far as his performance goes, because we talked about all of the emotions that, you know, Colin Farrell portrayed at one time. But watching Colm, um, played by Brendan Gleeson, be able to pull off one indifference, that's fine. It is what it is. People are indifferent all the time. But you see like this this under layer of regret
Right.
where he's not fully committed to this breakup, but he knows that if he wants to accomplish the things that he wants to accomplish, he has to kind of cut loose from his biggest distractions, which is friendship.
Right.
That's why he keeps the casual acquaintances. He doesn't care about them. He cut out the one person that he really, really cares about, so we could write his music. Then that's Banshees of Inisherin.
Excellent. Really excellent. Good choice.
Thank you.
Okay, so keeping with my medieval politics theme, I said that Peter O'Toole was in one of my other choices, and true to form, my number three choice is a movie called Beckett. Now, a little bit of background on Beckett. It was originally created as a stage play, and it was also, I think so. T.S. Eliot did, T.S. Eliot of King Arthur fame, um, y- Once and Future King, wrote this piece called Murder in the Cathedral. And it was also the story of Thomas Becket. And if you don't know who Thomas Becket is, he was a he was a priest, who was basically installed by the king when the king thought that placing him in this role would give him access to the church. And like all great things that sort of end up clashing, this one was no exception. Um, it Beckett's assassination in uh, 1170 was a turning point in English, both history and how they came to look at the separation between church and state. Very different than our understanding of church and state in the West, in the West meaning like the United States. But it really set the stage for some amazing things that happened afterwards. I think the murder of Beckett may have had the slightest foundation, or it was the slightest foundation for what really allowed Henry VIII to break away from the Roman Catholic Church completely. And at this time, that wasn't even part of it. So, okay, so Henry II of England is on the throne, and he has a friend, and his friend is Thomas Becket. And Thomas Becket, as Henry ascends to power and becomes more and more powerful and is able to do a lot of things, um, kind of joins him for the ride. Now, remember that 1066 is the year of the Norman conquest into England. So we had this huge division between the Saxons and the Normans. So England's been taken over by the Normans at this point. And the one thing that the movie gets wrong is Becket was not, there was no, although this was actual strife that the Saxons and the Normans clearly did not get along. I mean, the Normans took over their country. Um, Becket did not factor into that. So it's like the one big historical glaring error that the movie gets sort of wrong. But that's just because the play necessarily sort of pulls from this dynamic in order to make the Norman Saxon divide even more pronounced than it could be just by kind of seeing things casually in a play. Okay. So Thomas Becket becomes invested in the church when the king appoints him into this particular role that allows him to be the Archbishop of Canterbury. And through that, they begin to quarrel, argue, ultimately just violently fight. And what was an amazing friendship, an amazing camaraderie dissolves into the two of them being bitter enemies. And I don't know if you've ever heard someone say, "Will no one rid me of this man? Will no one rid me of this, uh, burden?" And that was Henry saying, with what I would call at the time even plausible deniability, like, "Well, yes, I said it, but I didn't expect you to go kill him." And Henry's men took that to be they wanted someone to assassinate Becket, and they did. And they killed him on the floor of the cathedral in Canterbury. And that's real. They really did. Um, so the story sort of has that historical piece to it. That's the basic historical piece. There's a lot of other stuff that goes along with it, but this is the basic history. The reason that I feel like this movie deserves the one of the top accolades that I can give it is partly the performance of Peter O'Toole, which I feel like just absolutely broke the ceiling for this over the top, absolutely perfect representation of the most vile and yet the most penitent person that there possibly could be. Famously, Henry received lashings from the church for the murder of Becket. Obviously, they couldn't, commit regicide. They couldn't kill him, but they demanded penance. And as penance, some people say they just softly whatever, but but the penance he was supposed to serve was to be whipped on the cathedral floor in a similar way to, hey, violence and violence. um okay, so there's the Peter O'Toole aspect, and then there is this absolutely wonderful idea in this movie that sort of brings forward um what later is going to set up a civil war, because we've got uh, Eleanor of Aquitaine in this movie. We've got Empress Matilda in this movie. We've got Prince Henry, Prince John. We've got Pope Alexander. We've got Thomas Becket, King Henry. We have all the major players who later will go on to really define what would become a civil war in England just a few years later. And it's pretty amazing. I mean, it's an absolutely astounding story. Once again, the sets in this particular movie are absolutely divine. They are gorgeous, and m- you do feel a sense of majesty. The cathedral, especially the Canterbury Cathedral, is absolutely gorgeous. And I know that they did shoot some stuff on location, so that's sort of neat. Um, but there's also, I think, a an aspect to this particular story that kind of gives you a feel for the absolute monumental pivot point that this was. And it's all done in kind of metaphor and extended analogy through the characters, one being, one side and one being the other side. And it really plays well as, the foreshadowing for what's about to happen to in England. Richard Burton is the character who played Beckett, and you can't get better. You just can't get better. Richard Burton and Peter O'Toole together made an amazing cast. Just I mean, the two of them together were they played off of each other so well. Um, I don't know. I mean, I guess that there's a lot more that I could say, but I will say one other thing about this. The movie itself, when it premiered and it was extremely well received, but it was extremely well received, and it had a kind of it had a kind of odd following to it that I'm not absolutely sure if at the time people truly understood kind of what it would what kind of precedent it would set. um Beckett rekindled a love for medieval history, but also a sort of wild kind of comparison between why monarchies can be so out of control and why we don't want one, and w- sort of like what unchecked power really is, what it looks like, how it is so unconstrained. And yet at the same time, good people stand up and do the right thing. It's just a really fascinating amount of really genuine feeling in this film. I absolutely loved it. It really, to this day, just holds my attention and stands up to the test of time. Um, this was released in 1964, I believe, and the music in this was done by somebody named Lawrence Rosenthal, who is also just absolutely masterful when it comes to adding the right music at the right time. It all sounded like it perfectly fit this particular era. It was gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. So Beckett gets my number three choice.
That is definitely a choice.
I'm assuming that you've never seen Beckett.
I've never seen Beckett.
Do you know the story of Thomas Beckett?
I do not.
Really? Well, that's interesting.
The story or the fact that I haven't heard the story?
Uh, the the fact that you don't know anything, like that you don't know the story of Beckett. Also, just if I could mention, since we're talking about awards and nominations, Beckett was nominated for, gosh, I don't know. Let me do a quick count. One, two. Okay, it was nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Supporting Actor, Best Screenplay, Best Art Direction, Best Cinematography, Best Costume Design, Best Film Editing, Best Scoring in Music, Best Sound, Best Edited Feature Film, Best Film from Any Source, Best British Film, Best Actor, Best British Screenplay, Best Cinematography in a Theatrical Feature Film, Best Foreign Film from Cinema Writers and Directors Guild of America nominated it for Outstanding Directorial Achievement in Motion Pictures. Um, Golden Globes gave it a heads up for Best Actor in a Motion Picture Drama for Peter O'Toole. It also won it was nominated for 2 other Golden Globes, including Best Picture and Best Original Score. Um, and the Writers Guild of America nominated it, and it won for Best Written American Drama. So, I mean, this movie has like a massive amount of nominations for why the film was great, or nominations to nod to how the film was so great. And each one of these sort of carries its own conversation about why it was so amazing. I mean, best art direction in color was sort of like, at the time, color was fairly new. Not new enough to be like, wild, but new enough that it deserved its own category. And this movie was nominated for it because it absolutely did something with color which was a little bit interesting. There was a little bit of oversaturation. There was some actual oh, I guess I would call it filter work, but it wasn't really filter work. That's not what they called it. There's diffusion. There was all kinds of great stuff that happened in this movie that was sort of cutting edge at the time. Now, we would think of this as provincial now. It's, wow, that's so old school. But at the time, it was really leading edge. So I just thought I'd throw that in there because it's not like I just love medieval history, although I do. The movie itself was absolutely nominated across the board for everything. And the quality of the movie absolutely supports that. It shows it.
Well, I will check it out.
Begrudgingly.
You haven't steered me wrong yet when it comes to recommendations, so I will check it out.
Beckett is one of those movies that if you watch it, you're changed by it, but you also all of a sudden will feel like you've got a cultural heads up about some other things that you might not necessarily piece together. So Beckett's a great sort of way to be introduced to, not everybody knows about England's Civil War with Maud and Stephen, but you get to hear just a tiny bit about it in Beckett, and that's not even the major plot. And so you just sort of like pull together a little bit of that particular history, and it's kind of neat. I like it. I like it a lot.
What year was it released?
This was released in, what did I say? I want to say 64. Yeah, I think it was 64. I'm pretty sure.
13. No wonder I'm in the 70s. 1952. Sorry, I'm going through the Best Picture nominees so I can add this to my watch list. There it is. And then I just click the eyeball. And that is how Beckett gets added to my Letterboxd watch list. Letterboxd, where you can keep track of all the movies that you watch and all the scores you give them. With awesome filtering technology, you can make lists and go through them with ease.
Letterboxd.
Give us money. So, regardless of us already playing the game, I'm going to play the game again.
All right, let's do it.
Because this movie is forever quotable. And this is probably, when I watched this for the first time, I believe I was like 11 years old. And this is like the line I thought was great. And it is great. But 11-year-old me also thought it was great. So 42-year-old me is like, yep. So you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
All right. See if you can guess the movie. You're totally going to guess the movie. Everyone's going to guess the movie. It's not hard at all. It totally gives it away. So, and it has the name in the name of the movie in the line.
Oh,
so,
thanks. That was helpful.
All right, listen up, ladies and gentlemen. Our fugitive has been on the run for 90 minutes.
Oh, I already know what
Average
it
foot
is.
speed over uneven ground, barring injuries, is 4 miles per hour. That gives us a radius of 6 miles. What I want from each and every one of you is a hard target search of every gas station, residence, warehouse, farmhouse, henhouse, outhouse, and doghouse in that area. Checkpoints go up at 15 miles. Your fugitive's name is Dr. Richard Kimball. Go get him.
There is nothing better than that 1993 movie. I mean, I shouldn't say there's nothing better. There is nothing better to be quoted than that 1993 movie because Tommy Lee Jones. I feel like this movie was the prequel movie to Tommy Lee Jones getting Agent K. I just feel like that's exactly what it is.
Well,
Like,
it's definitely the precursor to U.S. Marshals, where we got to see that character come to life again.
Yes, exactly. Yes, thank you. I mean, it just absolutely. It's kind of like Men in Black is sort of like an alternate universe for The Fugitive, where the fugitives are aliens instead of Dr. Kimball.
In fact, I thought I never thought about it before, but it would be great if he was like Agent S.
Uh, no,
So
that'd be too on the nose. That would be just too on the nose.
this is, I mean, it's a great movie. Harrison Ford, Tommy Lee Jones. I didn't kill my wife. I don't care.
I love that.
Oh man, love. There goes the microphone. I love this movie. Love everything about this movie. It's got high. Now I was gonna say high octane, but it's got hot set pieces. That train derailment is just. I remember a time when, pre-internet, of course, where you would have these tabloid shows, right? Entertainment Tonight,
Hmm.
uh, Extra, all these things. And when a new movie was coming out and it had like a huge set piece, you would see the show come on the air like, and tonight we're going to be taking a look at the new film The Fugitive and how they put together this massive train scene. And then someone else would be like, that looks crazy. And it it is,
Uh,
I mean, don't get me wrong, it's great having technology sometimes, but back then things were more of cultural events, where everybody was like on the same wavelength, you know,
mhm.
because things were limited. You didn't have access to literally everything ever made. But the Fugitive came out in 1993. By the way, Tommy Lee Jones won his Best Supporting Actor Oscar for this, and unfortunately, the film did not. But if you are unfamiliar with The Fugitive, why are you here? It's like one of those movies where you like literally, if you're a movie fan, it just pops up, you know, in your library at some point. You don't know how it got there, but you're just like issued it. Like what did Wayne Campbell say? It's like Frampton comes alive. When you
Yep.
move to the suburbs, you're just issued it.
Mhm.
The Fugitive is very much mandatory watching for movie fans because Harrison Ford and Tommy Lee Jones, I believe they won Best On Screen Duo for the MTV Movie Awards that year. Don't quote me on that, but just it gives you an idea of how well these two played off each other with the story of a doctor played by Harrison Ford wrongly accused of murdering his wife and the U.S. Marshal that has to hunt him down. And the thing is, there are so many times, or I should say, so many other stories where the the police investigator is like emotionally drawn into the hunt, right? It becomes almost personal, and
7.
there you go. With the fugitive, no, no, it he's just completely indifferent
Yeah.
to what's going on because that's not his job. It's not his job to figure out what's going on. His job is to get the guy that escaped from prison because of a train derailment and get him back to prison. And he's there to do his job. Lawyers, judges, they're the ones that take care of innocent and guilty. He just doing what he's paid to do, and he's really good at it. But Dr. Kimball knows he's innocent because the one-armed man did it. Yeah, that's right. The one-armed man. Something that's oft referenced ever since. And the way that whenever these two are on screen together, Dr. Kimball's like, I'm telling you the truth. Please stop hunting me. He's like, look, man, I don't care. Okay, I'm just doing my job. They of course do a much better job of that on the screen. The point is, the great dynamic between these two amazing characters is a sight to behold. In fact, as I mentioned before, Tommy Lee Jones did such an incredible job as Samuel Gerard that The Fugitive got a sequel about him chasing a completely different innocent man, played by Wesley Snipes. It was called U.S. Marshals. And I think the biggest problem with that, not that I'm going to go off on a tangent about U.S. Marshals, is it didn't have that relatability or that likability between the hunter and the huntee.
Yep.
Harrison Ford, the quintessential everyman, whether he's Indiana Jones or Dr. Kimball, he's just a guy, right? When he's playing just a guy, essentially, he is that. Yeah, when he's Han Solo, smuggler, ne'er do well, depending on which cut you're watching. Han shot, and no, not Han shot first. Han shot. He was the only one that shot in the original cut. None of this first nonsense. He's the only one. Anyway, digress. He's the guy you can get behind because he's innocent, and people have some inherent want of actual justice when they see that someone is being wronged. And the thing is, they also don't hate the guy hunting them because he's not doing anything wrong either.
Right.
It's a weird dynamic. So weird. Somebody's hunting another guy. I use the term hunting, but usually in these situations, it's a straight line antagonist, protagonist kind of situation. No, both of these guys are the hero. They just happen to be on opposite ends of, the hunt. So The Fugitive, excellent, good shot movie. I can't say words. And that was a great shot movie. God. Falling apart right now. It's a movie with great cinematography, beautiful performance. The writing is absolutely incredible, especially, there are. I'll be done in just a second, I promise. There, one scene in particular comes to mind is when like some of Sam's subordinates are like, "Hey, that's weird. Why would he risk going to the hospital to find out information about a guy that, the court said doesn't exist, because they don't believe the one-armed man story?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's hinky." And Tim's like, "Hinky. Basically, stop using fake words." That's what he was concerned about. It's like I said, it's not his job to deduce what really happened to Dr. Kimball's wife. So, for all of those reasons, The Fugitive is my number 3, and in my heart, it's got to be the best movie based on a TV show like ever, right?
It definitely, I think, is an excellent adaptation. Yes. In part because the director, who is also, I mean, I don't know how you sort of like flip the record on this, but Andrew Davis was the director on The Fugitive, and he also is an amazing cinematographer who sort of like knows what to look for in action thrillers. And I think he did Andrew Davis did a Chuck Norris movie that was called Code of Silence, I think. But he also did a whole bunch of Steven Seagal movies, which are just, super high octane, over the top. And he even did Collateral Damage with Arnold. But then, he also Andrew also did the movie Holes, which, is not an action thriller. It's kind of a straightforward story that is, it's great. It's awesome. He did a good job with that, actually. But you could tell that his forte is in the action drama. He really can see into action sequences, and it kind of comes out. It came out in this movie that was called A Perfect Murder. And that particular one stars Michael Douglas and Gwyneth Paltrow, I think. And it's the kind of it's the kind of thing that only somebody who recognizes how to do crime thrillers sets the stage. If you don't, if you, the audience can't be left hanging at any given moment. Although you can make it a puzzle, you can never make it about the puzzle. It has to be about the individual characters, because audiences don't go to the theater to solve a puzzle. They go to the theater to see performance. The puzzle can be like an adjacent part of the story, but it can't be the whole story. Seven, again, comes to mind as being done really well with that. But Andrew, he really does an amazing job of bringing the crime thriller, the action drama to life. And I'm not a huge fan of Steven Seagal's movies, but I am absolutely committed to especially the movie Above the Law, because it has some of the best action sequences that I think I can remember. Just absolutely stellar. So yeah, shout out to Andrew, because yeah, absolutely amazing. So good choice.
Thank you. Thank you. Hopefully, I've seen some of your next movies.
All right. Yes, you've seen. Well, you may not have seen them. I know I've told you to watch at least one of them a billion times, and I know that you haven't, but we'll get to that later. I will give you my number two choice, and boy, it was hard to put this in my number two slot because I really wanted to put it at my number one. But I gave. Okay, so The Lord of the Rings, either the Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, or The Return of the King. They were all nominated at different times. The Return of the King is the one that actually won an Oscar. I was there at that particular Academy Awards, so I got to see that happen, and I was super happy. I also went to this after party that was put on by this group called the One Ring. It was this massive fan website, and they had um, a Nazgul statue outside. There's a picture of me with that Nazgul statue that I post every now and again. There were giant Shelobs, the giant spiders. They had those all set up. It was amazing, absolutely. Like, boy, talk about getting drawn into cinema history. It was crazy awesome. And I mean, The Lord of the Rings is my biggest nerdy, geeky fandom that I belong to. I've been reading The Lord of the Rings since I was, well, okay, I read The Hobbit when I was 8. I read The Lord of the Rings when I was 9 into being 10, and then I read the rest of the trilogy um as a preteen. So I have been involved sort of in this story for decades and decades and decades, not to say how old I am, but it's been a while. And when I saw Peter Jackson bring this to life, I had my critiques and I had my, look down my nose at certain things because, was that really Tolkien and blah blah blah. But overall from the hey, uh film student aspect of both movie making and storytelling, you can't well you can, but I can't find the level of fault in these movies that I could with just about any other movie. There is a genuine love in all of these movies, but let's just go with the one that won. Let's go with The Return of the King. Um, the set design was gorgeous. The music by Howard Shore was sweeping, cinematically just perfectly fitting, but the symphonic value of the music in all three of the movies, and specifically in The Return of the King, just absolutely it blows my mind even to this day how gorgeous it is. And how iconic it is that the moment that you hear music from the Lord of the Rings, you know that it's the Lord of the Rings. It really sparked an entire new generation of fans. And even to this day, it still does the same thing. Even to this day, people will watch The Lord of the Rings, and if they haven't seen it before, they're sucked in. Some people who right now are like, Gen Z kids who are really invested in Dungeons and Dragons. If they haven't seen the trilogy, they get really excited by it. That is just, to me, that's gold. That's absolute gold. This is one of my most favorite fandoms of all time. But from a movie making standpoint, this movie has something really special. It's attention to fine detail. It's absolute, wherever possible, practical effects that make everything real, like come to life. Yes, I know that there was plenty of green screen, but there were more times than not when 50 people on horses were riding across huge grassy fields because that's what made it look like there was an army on the way. Um, there were unbelievable things that were added in just for fan service. Small details to the swords, small details to Edoras, I mean, without getting too involved, there were so many pieces of absolute beauty and wonder that made me fall in love with the story all over again, despite the fact that I've been reading these things for years and years and years and years and years. I think that it definitely deserves a top tier mention because, like a lot of movies, there's a lot of politics that go on behind the scenes in both movie nominations and movie win. For best picture, for best director, for whatever. And that's just part of Hollywood culture. Look, we're not going to change that. It exists. It's a thing. But I don't particularly see a huge difference between The Return of the King and The Fellowship of the Ring in terms of quality and in terms of what was offered. But The Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King swept the Academy Awards, and won for best picture, best director, best, and it deserved it. It absolutely deserved it. But all of the movies really did deserve that kind of top tier accolade. It really, really is just a cinematic masterpiece in my mind. It's hard, I think, to look at this film and you can critique small pieces here and there, but it's hard to look at this film and find like huge valleys of fault. Although I would point to the length of the films as being, a possible deterrent for some people because, yeah, it was really long. There's also the genre niche that this movie kind of captures. It's not like a movie where, like, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where even if you're not interested in insane asylums, you're not going to find this movie to be very compelling. The Lord of the Rings, because it is set in the fantasy landscape that it is, it can definitely be something that people wouldn't pick up on, because they're just not, that's not where their interest is. They don't like fantasy, or this isn't their domain, is not in this realm, and that's fine. But the movie making itself was absolutely exceptional. Every behind the scenes piece of documentary that is published is, it further entrenches in my mind not just the attention to detail that they went through in order to make this beautiful and stunning, but the level of craftsmanship that went into these films, from everything that includes, like, the saddles that the horses wore, to the costumes that everyone wore throughout all the different phases, to the to the actual real CGI that was, how are we going to make these giant army scenes feel like they are giant army scenes? Rain and darkness and, cute and clever tricks of the trade really, really paid off. So I know I'm gushing a lot, but the Lord of the Rings, either the Fellowship of the Ring, the Two Towers, or the Return of the King, exceptional, exceptional movies. And even though only The Return of the King won, they all definitely deserved all of the nominations that they got. So that's my number two, The Lord of the Rings.
You picked a Lord of the Rings movie? That's a shocker.
I know. And my number one movie is going to be just as much of a shocker, and you're going to go, oh my God. I bet you already know what it is.
I'm not going to say. I'll let you say it.
You'll let me whistle it. Everybody who knows me, when they say, "Oh, what's Jen's favorite movie?" Everybody knows my favorite movie. Like, it's no secret. And the fact that it was nominated and won an Academy Award, just makes it all the better. So, but we'll get to that. What's your number two?
Mine number two. Well, uh, I could probably pull some quotes from it, but yeah, no point. It's a good movie. It's fine.
Is it that iconic?
It's I guess it's a little iconic. There've been a couple of different versions of it made, and I'd say none of them are in the ballpark of quality as this movie. But my number two came out in 1957, and it goes by the name.
1957.
Yes.
Hmm. Can I guess it?
Sure.
Okay. 1957. I'm gonna guess. Hmm. I'm gonna guess.
You are correct.
Let's see. I'm gonna get. I mean, there's a lot of good ones in this. This is a good. This is a really. I know it's not the Ten Commandments, so I'll kind of throw that one out there. I'm gonna guess. The King and I.
I've never seen that.
Oh, okay. Whoops. Sorry. Okay. Um. All right. Really? You never saw The King and I?
I've never seen The King and I.
Wow. Oh,
Not
that's
the movie. I've seen stage productions.
Yeah, I kind of figured that. Hmm. Well, what is another good? I mean, I don't think it's Around the World in 80 Days, because that seems a little kind of off point for you. Um, I don't know. I don't know. What is it? Is it
Now,
giant?
remind you, I said it came out in 1957, which means it would have been eligible for an Oscar in 1958.
Oh, okay. So not, because I don't know what else was. I don't know what else was nominated in 1957, other than the ones that I just mentioned. 1958. 12 Angry Men.
Exactly.
Ooh, nailed it. Okay, 12 Angry Men. Which, through no we did not plan this, it was not collaborated, but my number one movie was actually also nominated in 1958. So it's in very,
Interesting.
yes, very good company.
Well, 12
Tell us
Angry
about
Men.
12 Acre Men.
We've talked about it on the show before. I'll keep things brief. It
Yes, we have.
is 12 incredible performances. One, for the most part, absolutely. Well, I want to say it's an amazing set, but the fact that all of this takes place in essentially one room
Hmm.
and the interesting little things that they do to mark passage of time, to showcase how hot it is, and all of that, everything is absolutely resting on the performances, again, not of one person or two people, to carry the load of this production. No, all 12 people have to play their roles incredibly well, because there is no action to rely on. There's nothing except the conversations between the characters
Right.
to carry the story forward, to keep your interest in the fact that it is a group of, I mean, we wouldn't use the term in the same context now, but back then they were 12 diverse uh men. Today it would be like, what are you talking about? It's like pretty much like all white dudes. No, it's more about their backgrounds and how each one, how they were raised, where they were raised. It all affects the story of how they feel about the situation at hand and the person on trial. And for those of you that are somehow unaware of what 12 Angry Men is, these 12 men are on a jury, and they have to decide whether or not a person is innocent or guilty. Simple, simple story. And I'm going to tell you right now, for all of you aspiring screenwriters out there, and you're like, well, this is my A plot, this is my P plot, this is my C plot. Here's where it gets really complicated. Here's where this happens. Here's, cool. That's fine. But remember, you don't need super complicated to make a complex and intriguing story. You can just throw characters in a room and make one of the greatest films ever. And yeah, I know it's based on the stage play, but the point being, a lot of writers tend to overwrite. I think, especially in the last few years, and yeah, they're just doing what they're told to do. They're doing their jobs, but if we could start focusing more on character, um, I would be happy.
Mm.
And 12 Angry Men is nothing but character development, because each man has to go on their own journey, and you get to watch all of them take their journey on screen. 12 characters with full arcs, all in one room. 12 Angry Men is a classic. It's a masterpiece, and it cannot be spoken highly of enough. There's not enough praise in the world you can give this movie. It is absolutely amazing. And strangely enough, I say all of this, and it's only my number two. So 12 Angry Men to my number two.
Yeah, it's an amazing movie. Henry Fonda was, well, Henry Fonda, what can I say? Just absolutely amazing person. Totally amazing. Okay, so my number one movie also came out in 1958, and with zero fanfare, because everybody knows what my favorite movie is. And again, there's a reason that this movie sits at the top of my list and always has as my number one. It has pretty much never changed. I've never seen a movie that actually beats this movie for everything that I'm just about to tell about it. The Bridge on the River Kwai. Bridge on the River Kwai tells a fairly simple story of a unit that gets captured, and they are forced to, let's just say, adapt in a work camp to build a bridge that will connect a railway that is basically going to be a major supply chain hub. And they put these men to work building this bridge, and Alec Guinness is the principal character. He, what's a good way to say this? His ability to convey a sense of stoic English production is sort of at the heart of everything, but there is something more. There's a representation of what actual um, rank means, how the British Army really treats the way that, well, it used to treat the way, I guess maybe still does. I don't know. I'm really not very well versed in the British Army. Um, but the way that they used to treat rank inside of the army, and it was a very strict hierarchy where everybody did their job. Everybody had a niche, everybody did a thing. One of the things that makes me truly love this movie, aside from the fact that they actually built, a lot of the bridge that we see, um, so that they could walk over it, so that there were these big sweeping shots of it, um, is the up close and personal character arc of both of our, well, the protagonist, but our antagonist as well. Um, the British POWs are, because, okay, let me say this a different way. The Japanese who have captured the British POWs have a very different idea of how to make things work. And it's British ingenuity that comes up with the system that makes the bridge viable. But in the end, the bridge, despite the fact that it stands and is an actual monument to British productivity, engineering, and ingenuity, is still the means by which bad things will happen. And in the end, Alec Guinness has to make a strong choice about what to do. And eventually he makes the right choice, but it's complicated because he doesn't want the bridge to blow up. He sees that it's about to be blown up and he's trying to protect it. But at the last minute, although he doesn't really make a conscious choice, he does see that, of course, this is a tool that is going to be used nefariously. And yeah, that makes sense. Um, the biggest piece of, and I know sounds so trivial, but it makes up the bulk of the movie. The biggest piece of this movie is the Geneva Convention says that officers are exempted from manual labor. And this is sort of like where the Japanese and the British commanders have their biggest beef. And until they get to that, until they figure that out, which takes it's a battle of wits and tenacity and willpower. And until they get to that, they can't even get to the building. And once they get to the building, that's when all of the big construction, the big engineering, the big, hey, we're going to make this work, even though we're going to make this work and it's going to be a source of pride for us. That is The Japanese cannot take this away from us. And yet, of course, ironically, that's exactly what they did, because they're having them build this thing for the most, terrible purpose of all, which is connecting these two pieces, across a river, in order to make sure that they can get supplies from one side to the other. So, I mean, like, there's all kinds of irony in this movie. There's all kinds of, um, I don't want to say it's representational history, because there's a lot of things that are wrong with this. So the real history of, if you put that in quotes, the real history is a little bit different than what we see, but the representational history feels kind of right on. And as a character study, um, we absolutely see the battle of wills between the two men, as if they are actually fighting on the front, even though it's a battle of willpower. It feels like it's a representation of the actual war itself. There's also a lot of lessons about class in this movie. There's a lot of sort of ideas that get adapted, um, which kind of make you rethink, um, how you look at, a different culture, and why you have the preconceived notions that you do. Um, there's so much in this movie that is just absolutely amazing. Um, I'm I mean, always surprised at the number of people who haven't seen this movie. Um, because I always feel like, hey, this movie makes every single top 50 list of movies you should see. And I'm always absolutely astounded by the number of people who haven't seen it. Um it isn't just a good movie. It's a movie that sort of speaks about a time that we don't talk about a whole lot anymore, and that deals with a topic that is so still relevant. Not the war part, although of course that still is, kind of relevant, but the part about what separates us in terms of how we perceive our own class, what we will and will not do based on our own principles, our own, what is it that we think is our number one most important thing. And it's complicated, it's not straightforward. It's not like, he doesn't want to work because he doesn't want to work. It's because he absolutely is holding the Japanese to the Geneva Convention. He is holding them to that notion that if he breaks with that, if to him that breaks the Geneva Convention. It breaks everything that is the most important part of being a prisoner of war. Um, it's amazing. It's just an amazing story. And then on top of that, we have some incredibly iconic moments. We have beautiful cinema. We have odd, trips through the jungle, as we sort of have these female Sherpas that, lead us through the jungle so that we can get back to the bridge. That was always such a weird, I don't know, I always felt like that was weird. But it reminds us that, um, there's a reason that building this bridge is so difficult, and it has a lot to do with how remote this place is. I don't know, there's just so many things that I could go on and on and on about, but I'm going to say that by the end of this movie, when you realize what's going to happen, and how much work these people put into it, it's sort of bittersweet, because, spoiler alert, they do blow up the bridge at the end. So, you know, it definitely feels like, wow, they have spent years of their life on this thing, and look what happens. Now they have to blow it up because that's for the greater good. So it's kind of crazy. But anyway, number one for me, Bridge on the River Kwai.
Shocker.
Yeah, I know. I know.
But greatness, right?
I mentioned to my kid that we were doing this list, and they immediately said, "Oh, I already know what's at the top of your list," and they were right.
I will say though, I am very happy that you didn't take this opportunity to fill 3 spots with Lord of the Rings movies. Um,
Oh yeah, I could have. I thought about that. No, I didn't.
that would have been something. Yes, the Bridge over the River Kwai. I can't say I've seen it, like seen it. It's one of those movies that's like you grow up, it's always been on, but whether or not you really focused on the movie, I don't think I've ever had a focused watch through. I don't
See,
remember.
I mean, at this point, Bridge on the River Kwai, to a lot of people, I think, can feel it feels like an old movie, and I mean, it is. It's an older movie. It's a good what 50 years old now. Um, it's not. It doesn't move at a pace that we're used to. I just had this discussion with someone very recently on sort of cinematic storytelling arcs and why we have now so many smaller subplots, and a lot of this has to do with not that everybody's ADD, but I just sort of call it ADD culture, where we need to be distracted continually by something that has a beginning, middle, and end in the first act, in the second act, in the third act, instead of it's the beginning, middle, and end, first, second, and third act. And this movie is definitely one of those that requires you to be patient with it because it's telling a grand story. It's not telling a bunch of mini stories. The Lord of the Rings, any one of those movies is telling, 15 different sub stories at any one given time, and you can focus on them in small 5 or 10 minute intervals and you feel like you get a lot out of it. But Beckett, Bridge on the River Kwai, even One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, it's narratively a single set of character arcs that really you have to be patient with in first, second, and third act to get to the meaningful end of the film. Um, it's not something that it's not something that you're going to be placated with, because there's like all these different side quests or all these small things happening. Even To Kill a Mockingbird, to be honest, has a lot more happening in the movie with all of its small pieces with Scout and with Jed and the tree and the neighbor and there's all these things that happen, and then there's the trial. And so, you come away from that movie feeling like was a lot to pay attention to. Bridge on the River Kwai has, I mean, there's a big story to be told here, but you have to be patient with the storytelling in order to get to that really satisfying conclusion at the end, which means that you have to be invested in the characters and what their true motivations are and why those motivations even exist in the first place. You can't watch this movie and not be invested in the characters because it won't make any sense. And so to that degree, it's kind of I can kind of tell, why people get a little, well, that was boring, or I don't understand why that was so great, or whatever. It does require a lot of patience, you know?
I do, and sometimes I have it, sometimes I don't. That's why if if it's something that I need to pay attention to, I like I said, I watched like 28 movies last week. But if I'm being honest, most of them were like on when I was doing other things, open a window and that kind of thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
And this might be weird to say, but I feel it's disrespectful to some material that requires the attention if I just kind of put it on in the background. Like it doesn't even count.
Right,
Even,
and
I was going to say,
there's a oh, go ahead.
no, I was going to say, some movies, it's like, oh, yeah, I know what this is. You turn your head at a punchline every now and then, and it's fine. But
Mhm.
yeah, some movies deserve your full attention and respect while you're watching it.
I I think that there are two types of movie watching, and I mean I'm sure that there's many other types too, but I for this purpose I'll classify them in two. One is active movie watching. And that's something that we normally do when we go to the theater. We are actively participating in the movie because we are right in front of it. We're not on our phones. We don't have anything else to do. We're sitting and we're being actively entertained by whatever the media is that's being presented in front of us. Okay, and then we have passive entertainment. And passive entertainment can be just as fulfilling and just as satisfying listening to an audiobook while you mow the lawn or experiencing a movie that's on while you're folding laundry and doing the dishes and whatever. But you're not going to get the same value out of passive entertainment that you will out of being actively entertained by something simply because you're just not as engaged. It doesn't make one right or wrong. It just, there is a difference in the way that we pay attention to movies. I will say that I watched the Hulu series Shogun. And uh, big shout out to Shogun. It was superb as a miniseries. Each episode felt like its own movie. Yeah, it was just incredible. But a lot of it was spoken in Japanese. And you really had to pay attention to those subtitles, or you were going to miss huge swaths of important dialogue that matter. Like matter to understanding what's going to happen next. And that really requires the audience to pay attention. And so it's just a different experience. And some movies work really well. To me, the Batman movies, a lot of the superhero movies work really well as passive entertainment. I can walk away from it and come back in 2 minutes and I can still know exactly what's happening without having seen every individual scene that has happened. Like, I can pretty much tell what's going to happen. Um, and I feel like they're kind of meant to be passive entertainment. Few movies anymore are meant to be very actively engaged with. Although Banshees of Inisherin, that actually is, I think, it requires you to be actively engaged in it. You can't miss all the stuff that happens. It won't make any sense. Then it just looks like two old guys or two guys arguing. It doesn't you don't get the context from it. So
Absolutely
yeah.
correct. And I think that's one of the major factors in a movie being a Academy uh, Award nominee for Best Picture. It's You are very rarely going to find a movie on the nominee list where it's just something you can passively watch. There's a reason why it's considered the best of the best, and it's either it's got a complex emotional story that has to be invested in to work, or B, it's so good that it grabs your attention and you just don't look away.
Right. Right. And I mean, not to be okay boomer about anything, because it's not, it's not it's not a critique necessarily, although I do, I could critique it a little bit. But we don't make movies like Bridge on the River Kwai, Beckett, Lion in Winter. We don't make those movies anymore for good reason, because people won't go watch them, because audiences don't have the patience to sit through them. Now, there are some standout exceptions, and you mentioned a couple even on your list, but by and large, audiences want to be engaged in a way that is, the only way I can say it is, there is a passive element to it where, look, there's like 15 things happening and I can pay attention to any one of those and feel fulfilled, as opposed to having, a solid first, second, and third act where we've got sort of like a rise in action that's a little bit slower in terms of, its build and its content, but character study is important. And, all of the things that we sort of once relied on as this is quintessentially how you tell if a movie is going to be good. This is what you've got. I oftentimes look at the horror genre and think, if we made a movie like Rosemary's Baby today, people would go, "That was stupid. Why did we? That's a dumb movie. What is that?" And it was horrifying at the time, absolutely horrifying. And the character study that is Rosemary and her husband and everybody else that's in the cult, that's what takes center stage. Those interactions, those important everyday moments, that's what takes. And it's today I feel like that would just be a boring movie. It doesn't have a ton of jump scares. It doesn't have a lot of, you know, building to the point where you're like crescendo, oh my god. Um, you know, it's we're just in a different point. We're at a different point in sort of storytelling and movie making. But it's great to look back on the body of work that has been uh Academy nominated films, because we get so much. We get this plethora of, where were we storytelling 50 years ago and where are we today? If that makes sense.
Oh yeah, it makes perfect sense. It's one of the reasons why most of our movies are not contemporary.
Right. I think that that's true. I do. Which is not, Gladiator almost made my list. Gladiator almost made my list. And that's about as contemporary as I have gotten in terms of, hey, here's the best of the best. I mean, Lord of the Rings is like right in there, and that, although that was a while ago, it still isn't that long ago. Um, but that storytelling is sort of an established, it's different. Gladiator is not, that's a totally different kind of story. And I loved that. I absolutely feel like that was one of the better movies that came out from a contemporary standpoint. And it's even again, once again, I guarantee if we put Ridley Scott's new Gladiator that he's coming out with shortly, whenever that comes out, and we paste it side by side with what Gladiator was, it's going to feel incredibly more action driven, more um kind of like less character development and more story in your face stuff, because that's what audiences want. This is, you know, this is it. And people like Ridley Scott and Martin Scorsese and a lot of other people, they have really criticized modern audiences, moviegoers, for being, for having ADD, for not, wanting to sit through and pay attention to things, for not appreciating art, for whatever. And I actually have to fundamentally disagree with them. That's not what it's about. It's about movies changing to fit the new dynamic. It's about our culture and our society has changed. Our art has to keep pace. If our art doesn't keep pace, then it becomes sort of sidelined, and it's just not as relevant to culture. So, movie makers, filmmakers, cinematographers, writers have to pay attention to what's happening in the world around them and what do audiences need and expect, and tell stories that are just as meaningful, but with these criteria. And it's possible to do, but yes, it's hard. So would we ever tell a story like The Bridge on the River Kwai today? Probably not. But we could tell a story that encompasses parts of that in a larger action film. Yes, we could. It's just, we would really need to pay attention to the timing and the pacing. So
Although, for being
sorry.
fair, If somebody came in with the script for Bridge over the River Kwai, I imagine it would be made probably by like an A24,
Mm, yeah, that's a good point.
and its audience would be much smaller than it would have been in the era that it was actually made.
Although we can make a direct comparison between The Bridge on the River Kwai and 1917, and we can say that it's 1917 that captures the modern day audience attention because of the vast amount of resources that went into the environment, the world around it, the action sequences, the in your face sort of, you know, and the one take piece, the one take aspect to it, which is insane. I mean, it's brilliance, but it's the same idea. That's sort of the 1917 is not that far away from The Bridge on the River Kwai, except that it's paced very differently. So storytelling has to keep pace with what audiences can accept or can assimilate, digest. What is it that's going to get people into, instead of telling people, shaming people about why they don't go to the theaters, get creative. We all need to figure this out. It's not going to happen by, making people feel bad about not wanting to be, less passively entertained. That's not that's not a message that can resonate with people. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go off on that huge spiel, but I feel like it was just an important piece of, you know, this is why we don't see movies like this anymore.
Hey, it's part of the magic of this show. Who knows where we're gonna go?
Yeah, Jen always goes off on some tangent. All right, so what's your number one movie?
And there's no time to
Lay
talk
it on
about that. We'll see you next week.
me. Sorry, use up all the time.
Well, I will say once again, my number one has been talked about pretty lengthy amount of time on the show before, and let me add, no crossover.
Oh, yeah, that's
We
right.
had to pull movies from the same, you know, list. Only 601 titles available, and we're both like completely different. Well, if that's not a clue for what my number one is, then it definitely wasn't. So, my number one, released all the way back in 2020. I'm kidding. No, it was released in 1940, and it was written by, uh, directed by, and starred Charlie Chaplin. It's The Great Dictator.
Oh, nice. Yes, we have talked about this movie before.
So I will keep things very brief. It's, in my opinion, one of the greatest films ever made. It was in production from, just say, the writing, the everything getting put together started, and I think it was 1938. And mind you, if you watch this movie, you'll say, "Oh, this is some sort of Hitler spoof because we're making fun of Nazis after World War II." Oh, no, not at all, not at all. This was before the U.S. entered the war. This was before the U.S. was like, yeah, I guess Nazis kind of suck. And by kind of, I mean absolutely, totally should be wiped from the earth. Anyway, this was pre-war for us, and Charlie Chaplin sees what's going on and sort of, well, does what he does. He makes a movie about it, and that movie is essentially a call for peace. It ends with one of the greatest monologues ever written for a film, with one of the best deliveries. Charlie Chaplin is legendary, of course, for his, absolutely iconic uh, silent films, slapstick. But he doesn't get enough credit as an actual actor, I don't think. Because I'm trying to find the right words here. There is a very clear and defining line between someone being a comic and somebody being an actor, it seems. People can do comedy. Comedy's hard. It's all about delivery and timing, and takes a very special skill set. What we do often see is that comics often redundant, more redundant. Uh, Comics do make the jump to drama at times and tend to do pretty well because, again, comedy is hard. But what a lot of comics don't get is respect for that ability. And for Charlie Chaplin to, now, mind you, he made a comedy movie and it was a satirical take on Adolf Hitler and the Nazi regime. There's a point in the movie, as I mentioned, the monologue, where he flips a switch and it becomes so. I keep the show clean for a reason, so I'm going to say he's so gosh darn earnest
Mhm.
and genuine in his plea for there to be peace in the world that it is a moment that should never be forgotten, but too often is. Nobody wins when bad people take over. Nobody wins in authority. Don't actually have to fight for the things that they started fighting for, or rather, they started everybody else fighting for. And at the end of the day, Chaplin's call to uh, get rid of the evil, get rid of the war, get rid of the fighting, and just live at peace, everybody, is, like I said, from 1940 when it was released to 2024, it reverberates, it echoes, and it's still, what's the word I'm looking for? Relevant. The Great Dictator is it's a beautiful piece of art
Yeah.
that should stand forever. In fact, it should be your independent theater, wherever you are, should be playing this annually, and everybody should have a reminder of the moral of the story. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get all serious on everybody. I had a lot of fun earlier doing the voices, and quite frankly, I think I crushed that Tommy Lee Jones line delivery.
Yes,
So
indeed.
if you want to reach out to me about some acting gigs, do so. It's hard not to talk about The Great Dictator. Again, a comedy without getting solemn, at least for me. And I do the best I can. But I also have to keep in mind, trying to go over things that we haven't, you know, talked about at length before when it comes to this movie, because it does keep coming up for a multitude of reasons, of topics. Let me close by saying this. Charlie Chaplin knew what he was doing. There's a story out there that says he sent a copy of the film to Hitler to watch. And some people say Hitler never watched it. A couple people said, yeah, he watched it twice.
Huh.
And that's when things started getting really bad. So I guess he didn't care for it. No, it's a movie that's made an impact, not on just the film industry, not just movies in general, not just this country. Just it made an impact on the world in some way back when. And thankfully, due to the hard work of preservation societies and things of that nature, it's still available for us to watch. We should really, you know what? We'll talk about that later. But The Great Dictator is my number one.
All right.
My number one choice. For those of you that know me, yeah, you might be a little surprised because I didn't suggest. I'm looking for a Kevin Smith movie. Dang it. Good Will Hunting. I didn't suggest Good Will Hunting. Technically a Kevin Smith movie.
We did. We actually talked about that when we were talking about how to craft this list the last time.
Oh, that's right.
Because we were like, yeah, no Kevin Smith. Okay, so I'm gonna go through my list, you go through your list, and then you give me some homework. Okay, so my number 10, A Man for All Seasons. Number 9, West Side Story. Number 8, Sounder. Number 7, My Fair Lady. Number 6, To Kill a Mockingbird. Number 5, Lion in Winter. Number 4, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Number 3, Beckett. Number 2, The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. And number 1, The Bridge on the River Kwai.
Going through my top 10 before I give you the homework. Number 10, LA Confidential. Number 9, 1917. Number 8, Whiplash. Sorry, that's not my tempo. Number 7, Dr. Strangelove. Number 6, Mad Max Fury Road. Number 5 is Mahdi. Number 4, The Banshees of Inisherin. Number 3, The Fugitive. Number 2, 12 Angry Men. And number 1, The Great Dictator. Jen, do you want to know what your homework is?
Yes, please.
Oh, because there goes the microphone. Okay, the homework for the next time. It was actually I threw out the original idea I had, and as we talked about, modern film and what its place is and da. I thought, you know what? Instead of going straight to what's your favorite this? What's the best that? I'm going to take us to hypothetical land.
All right. I'm intrigued.
So, our lists will involve the 2025 Academy Awards. And we have to, whether we've seen them or not, pick what we think the top 10 movies are going to be. There are 10 slots for Best Picture. So we're going to predict in June who the nominees are going to be in January. So you can have to do some research. You have to find out what's coming out this year, what's going to be eligible to be nominated for an Academy Award, and make your predictions and why you think it's going to be more difficult if you haven't seen the movie. But you know
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
Give it your best guess. This is why I think this
I
will be nominated.
that could be super interesting. Oh, I've already got a couple that I can think of right off the top of my head. But yeah, okay, this sounds good.
I thought we would do a little thinking exercise here, and maybe a little bit of psychic exercise too. Why not?
Nice.
And then when
I like
the
it.
actual Academy Awards are going to be the nominees announced, we can revisit this and see how wrong we were.
Yeah, probably way off, but that's okay. That's all good. That's all good.
But that's it's fun that we have something to revisit in the future. I do believe I
Yeah,
have that timer still set for something or other that we talked about a couple years back. I don't
I
remember how
totally
long the
agree.
timer was set for.
This could actually be super interesting. Yeah, okay. This is good. Okay, cool, cool, cool.
And now I have to figure out if any Kevin Smith movies are coming out this year.
Oh, oh boy.
Fine, fine. I'll play it legit.
What? I don't know. Whatever. Yeah, could be. Could be. You never know. This
I'm
could
not
be the year
saying
for
he
Kevin Smith.
can't be. I'm just saying
Yeah, never know.
some weird stuff has come up on the list before. So,
Yeah.
Jen,
Yes.
where can people find you on the internet if you want them to find you?
Okay, so you can find me at moviesandmeals.com. That's kind of the only thing I've really got going right now. I am actually working on some I'll just leave it at I've got some new projects that are coming up. Um they're a little bit different than some of the things that I have worked on in the past, but they are movie related, so stay tuned. I'll announce some things as I get a little bit closer. Um but it's kind of exciting. I'm excited about a couple of things. So we'll just leave it at that. But for right now, hey, join me over at moviesandmeals.com and yeah, drop me a line. Let you know it's amazing actually. A lot of people send me little um emails that are specifically they're asking for, hey, if I'm going to watch this movie, what's a good dish to wash to make? I'm sorry, not dish to wash. You can see where my mind is. Um, and I recently, when I was at Target of all places, was flipping through this book, which is the Netflix's sort of cookbook, the cookbooks for Netflix. And I gotta say, I was impressed and inspired. There was a lot of really good stuff in there. So, yes, come over to moviesandmeals.com, but also if you are the kind of person who really loves that kind of thing, that book is particularly interesting to have on hand because there's some really great ideas and everybody loves to have something on hand because Netflix is easy and simple to pop on. So I say that's a great idea.
It is
So
a
there
great
you go.
idea. It should have a certain website on the cover.
Yeah, you'd think that they would have, asked me about it, but no, no, they didn't.
Do I need to get
Uh,
these Watco Media lawyers on out there to help you?
I think we're okay. I think we're okay.
Okay, good. Because our lawyers are basically just me, and I'm not a lawyer.
You could outthink them. You could totally outthink them. Yeah, I have total faith in you.
Excellent. I like it when people have faith in me.
Yeah, I totally. And I'm not even saying
Nothing
that.
bad ever happens.
I'm not even saying that sarcastically. Not at all. Not even a little. I, yeah. Okay, I can't do it. I can't. I tried. I can't.
Oh God, we are an awesome team.
I have to say for the official Netflix cookbook, there sure are a lot of cooking ideas based off of cooking shows. So, yeah, that didn't exactly inspire me. But there's a lot but there is a lot of other stuff too. So, I'm just, how uh, baking ideas based off the Great British Bake Off. Well, wait a minute.
Here's the is it cake?
I I mean, yeah, yeah. Some things are, from a meta-contextual standpoint, there is the danger of going too far. But yeah. Anyway, some of the stuff was actually really good. They have a whole section that's called appetizers for your watch party, and they are actually pretty well done. Like I was pretty impressed. I was actually impressed.
I want to see some Santa Clarita Diet finger foods.
Like they have this thing for the Squid Games, which is basically like a bento box that
Mm-hmm.
is actually served. You can see that served in the Squid Games because bento is that's what they do. And I don't expect that anybody is going to go do all like there's a lot of prep in making this, but it's nice to see that somebody actually thought about it. You know, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Being creative's cool. But if you want to be creative with me, you can always go to wildcomedia.com, thewildcast.com. You can find either of those things on Facebook or Instagram. Go to School Paper on Instagram, the School Paper Jacks. It's a nifty little zine produced by Wadco Media in conjunction with City Bus Print. It's a physical thing that you'll hold in your hand, $2. If you're in the Jacksonville area, come on down to the City Bus main terminal, pick up a copy, or if you see me out in the wild, I generally have a few on me. It's a lot of fun putting together something that is basically a love letter to the local art scene here in Jacksonville, and I
Nice.
very much look forward to that all the time. And second issue is going to be coming out July 1st. Got a couple of great writers. I'm not allowed to announce who it is yet because the editor is like, all keep it hush hush, and I'm the editor, so I'd hate to cross myself. Anywho, on the Wadcast
Yeah, no,
Friday at 10
no,
p.m.
you're good.
Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, and it's a thing that's happening. And well, I guess if you're listening to this on a download basis and it's past whatever the date Friday is, sorry, you can go download that episode of the Wadcast, I guess, and then you'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
Ah.
But this week, for those of you listening early, uh, we're gonna have writer director Henry R. Nader on the show. He's going to be releasing his new documentary. He's directed 2 feature films, a short film, and now a documentary, and it's called Nader World.
Ooh.
Uh, it's debuting at Sunray in Jacksonville, Florida, our last independent theater. That's going to be closing by the end of July. Thanks a lot, Georgia investors that want to put in like a bar or something. It's
Oh
not like
God.
they're on a street where like 8 out of 10 storefronts are bars. They're like, let's have another one. Uh, yuck. Anyway, uh, Sunray is like the best theater, and it's where I get to go see myself act on screen. That's how
Ooh.
supportive they are of the local film community. And it's just awful that not only are they closing, they're closing imminently, but hopefully they find another place to land very soon. So uh, I'll keep y'all updated on any of the Facebook pages, whether it's Wadco Media, whether it's Wadcast, or whether it's School Paper, or even 10-1, the show that some people call the internet's favorite movie-centric list-making podcast. I've heard people say it. So,
Well,
with
I know
that
we've
being
said it,
said,
so
yeah,
that's
definitely say
absolutely
it.
true.
It's in the
Yes.
description
Yes.
every week. So, with that all being said, I guess there's only one thing left to do. Do you
Oh
know
my
what that
gosh, I
is?
can't imagine. What is it, Josh?
Well, um, say goodnight, Jen.
Good night, Jen.